Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Pawel Maciejko. I teach at the Évora University, and I will have the pleasure and an honor of chairing this panel. I will keep the introductions to the minimum so that we have time for discussion. Our first speaker this afternoon is Antonio Díaz, who is a postdoctoral researcher at the University of Évora. The topic of his paper is New Christians as Agents for Curial Businesses of the Spanish and Portuguese Crowns in Early Modern Rome. Please.
Thank you very much for the introduction. I wanted to express my gratitude to the organization of the workshop. It's a pleasure for me to be here. I'm afraid that I belong to the same Spanglish club of my dear friend here present, Ana Isabel López Salazar, so I beg your pardon for my terrible English. Consider for a moment the significance of the relations between the relations with Papal Rome for the Portuguese and Spanish crowns in the period of the Iberian Union, not as an Italian state, but as the head of the with the Curial administration. To this, we must add the thousands of dispensations that, for different reasons, the Curia issued each year to these realms. Pensions on bishoprics and other benefices, the erection of new dioceses, the negotiation of taxes of ecclesiastical origin of the utmost importance for the crown. We speak of a field of ecclesiastical, economic negotiation, but also of a field of political dimension. Can you hear me? The intense traffic of requests require fine experts on the uses and the mechanics of the apostolic dataria and other offices of the Roman Curia. The Catholic monarchy used for that purpose a system that reflected its supranational excuse me, its supranational nature, consisting of several experts, delegates residing in Rome. They were dispatchers who were employed in a stable way, credited as ordinary diplomatic agents of the crown, so that they could deal directly with the Pope, the Datary, and other officials of the Curia on behalf of the king. In fact, Rome was the only court where the Spanish monarch had two different but connected diplomatic delegations. One, the embassy that represented the king before the ruler of the Papal States and unified all the Spanish foreign policy. The other, the system of agencies for curial businesses, headed by the General Agent of Spain, represented the Catholic king before the visible head of the Church and the Roman Curia. Let's try this. No. There was a General Agent appointed by the king and in theory dependent on the Council of State. His responsibility was the curial business, which regarded Castile, the West Indies, the Inquisition, the Bull of the Crusade, one of the most important revenues of the crown by papal concession, as well as any other requirements of the governing bodies of the monarchy. A network of specific agents dealt with the affairs concerning other kingdoms and states of the Spanish Empire for greater agility. There was an agency, as you can see, for the Crown of Aragon, one for the Kingdom of Naples, one for the Duchy of Milan, for the Kingdom of Sicily, and one for the Spanish Netherlands. These agents often came from the patronage networks of each viceroy or governor who was able to choose them. Portugal, meanwhile, would be added to this system in the 1580s. In any case, the system could accommodate the needs for flexibility. The same individual could be responsible for several agencies at the same time. Some of them could be also exceptionally suppressed in favor of the general agent of Spain, etc. In any case, someone practical in Roma, to use the common expression in sources of the time, the period, was always sought, a person who could deal with Curial affairs diligently and skillfully, acting also as an informant at the papal court. Thus, between the ambassador and the different agents, the Spanish monarchy maintained several channels of communication and ensured it could receive as much information as possible. The system of agencies for Curial businesses was formally structured in the beginning of the reign of Philip II of Spain. We knew almost nothing about this network, and to my surprise, what I have found for the period between the 1550s and the 1650s, the first 100 years of normal operation of the system, is that many conversos fulfill this type of duties in the service of the Spanish Habsburgs. Obviously, not the all agents were new Christians, but I find their proportion was of an extraordinary significance in some agencies. Excuse me. For example, the numbers are still very tentative, but as I said, for example, in the Portuguese agency, the third part of the agents appointed by the Crown in this period were new Christians. In the case of the Italian agencies, at least 45% of agents were new Christians. But even more interesting is the fact that Converso agents were used more recurrently by the Crown in these agencies, so that 53% of nominations as agent of Sicily, Naples, or Milan were made in favor of new Christians. The use by the Crown of agents of Jewish descent, known at that time, was reiterated and conscious. It was not a rare phenomenon, but an example of the ambivalence that governed the relations between the Iberian monarchies and the new Christian minority. In the search for appropriate representatives in the Roman Curia, efficiency prevailed over genealogy, and many conversos showed that they could provide the most efficient services. In 1643, Philip IV proposed upgrading the general agency of Spain, gradually annexing the rest of agencies in the person of Alonso de la Torre Berna, professor of the University of Salamanca, who was serving at that moment the agency of Aragon. Alonso de la Torre was actually a member of the notorious New Christian lineage of the Bernoulli d'Avila from Burgos. He finally obtained the general agency with those of Aragon and Sicily annexed, but the Council of State never accepted to put the general agency on the same level of the embassy. His new Christian background was not the problem, but the possibility of confrontation with the ambassador. The Marquis of Castañeda, member of the Council of State, said to the king, everyone knew the problems that could create the inflated vanity of a professor of Salamanca. University professor loved to create factions. In the paper, I analyzed, in the writing paper, I analyzed the case of Andrés Vela, an Andalusian converso, agent for the Curial business of the Duke of Milan in Rome. He was an interesting character who embodies very well what these agents were. The parallels with the careers of other agents, such as Dr. Antonio Pinto, that Dr. James Novoa, I don't know where is he? Dr. James Novoa has analyzed in his recent book, or Ferrante de Torres, or Fernando de Torres, the same, are striking. Excuse me. The Torres family was also of the same Andalusian Jewish origins as Andrés Vela. Inquisitorial pressure seemed to have led Don Luis de Torres Sr. Fernanda, isto tem para... Excuse me. Here you are Don Luis de Torres Sr. As I said, the inquisitorial pressure seemed to have led him from his native Malaga to Rome in the first half of the 16th century. In 1563, his nephew, Don Luis de Torres Jr., wrote to Philip II under the pretext of the change of ambassador in Rome. In the letter, he recalled the good services rendered both by his uncle and by himself in the execution of Curial matters. With this letter, the family expressly reiterated its loyalty in a period of troubles in Rome, and willingness to serve the crown in the papal court in the future. As a result, in the 1570s, the agency of Naples was confided to Fernando or Ferrante de Torres, Don Luis' brother. Like the Torres, all agents maintain a direct channel of correspondence with the king. The respective council, viceroy or governor, for instructions, lines of credit, etc. They continually inform Madrid about their work as agents in the Curia. Some even made it a point of locating relics, archaeological objects, artwork, or specific artists, painters for the Spanish court. Dr. Juan Rubio de Herrera, here you are, Dr. Juan Rubio de Herrera, is an example of the variety of parallel functions that were developed by some agents. An Andalusian cleric of Jewish origin, he was known at the court of Madrid for his work as a provider of artwork, relics, archaeological items, etc. Following the usual strategy, he brought his nephew, Juan de Córdoba, to Rome, where he taught him everything he would need to know to succeed as a Curial agent and dealer in artwork. Moreover, the nephew came to play an important role in this field thanks to his close friendship with the painter Diego Velázquez. The position at the papal court and experience in negotiating with ecclesiastical benefices enjoyed by Juan Rubio de Herrera was, as in other cases, the key to the crown, entrusting him with the responsibility of obtaining apostolic letters and other related matters. The logical preferences of the crown for especially efficient and loyal agent sometimes were reflected in the performance of their duties for a very long periods. For example, the Portuguese New Christian José Pinto Pereira, with 29 years of service as an agent of Portugal, is a very good example. It was also evidenced in the accumulation of several agencies by the same individual, as precisely with Rubio de Herrera, who simultaneously held three, those of Naples, Sicily, and Milan. In his case, the key to his success in business was, in addition to his expertise in the dataria, his friendship with Ferdinando Brandani. Ferdinando Brandani is the Italian name of the Portuguese New Christian Fernando Brandão, the most powerful man in the dataria after the subdatario. Until the execution of the subdatario on account of corruption and Brandão's disgrace, this nexus was a social capital which Rubio de Herrera not only exploited, but was able to convey to his nephew when he succeeded him in the agency of Naples. Today, a reflection of these ties is the portrait that Velázquez, the friend of Juan de Córdoba, painted of Brandão during his stay in Rome. In the case of the Portuguese crown, previous to the advent of the House of Austria, there did not seem to have been a stable figure comparable to that of the general agent of Spain for the business of issuing apostolic letters. The most important issues were the responsibility of the ambassador himself in Rome or of a procurator who was expressly hired for the task. With the Iberian Union, the newly created agency of Portugal was entrusted to the then Secretary of the Embassy in Rome, Dr. Antonio Pinto. Pinto was a confidant of Lourenço Pires de Távora, who was the Portuguese ambassador to the Holy See there. The client-patron relationship between the Pinto and the Távora family came from far behind. The grandparents of the secretary, the Dr. Moisés de Valencia, I beg your pardon for this genealogical mess. You can forget all except Dr. Antonio Pinto. Here you are, Dr. Antonio Pinto, and his Jewish ancestry. Just one curious fact. In the reconstruction of the genealogy of the Pinto genealogy, beyond the coming to Portugal, I have found that Dr. Antonio Pinto was precisely cousin of Jerónimo Castilla de Bobadilla. We didn't know that Jerónimo Castilla de Bobadilla was New Christian, and we are speaking of the author of the key work for the political theory of government in the Spanish Empire, precisely. But returning to the to the point, I was saying that Dr. Moisés de Valencia, the grandfather of Antonio Pinto, baptized in Portugal as Antonio de Valença, and his wife, Francisca de Valença, or Valencia, both Jews from Zamora, had entered the service of the powerful Portuguese lineage after leaving the Távoras, after leaving Castile in 1492. From the first moment, Antonio Pinto saw in the new dynasty an opportunity for his family. He appeared in Badajoz to receive Philip II on his way to Lisbon, to Portugal, and offer his loyalty and services in Rome. Excuse me. Pinto would serve as an agent for the next 8 years, after which his nephew, Francisco Vaz Pinto, would succeed him. The nephew had previously been called to Rome by his uncle in order to be trained as a suitable substitute. The model is always the same. No? The crown accepted his offer in 1588 with the recommendation of the Count of Olivares, Spanish ambassador in Rome. The crown's favor to the Pintos, both to the uncle and the nephew, was based on their efficacious work, but also on their coordination with the Spanish embassy, a key goal from the reign of Philip II. Francisco Vaz Pinto worked as an agent of Portugal in Rome for 11 years and was replaced with the change of government. However, this new Christian lineage would be linked to the Portuguese agency through people like Francisco Pereira Pinto and Dr. José Pinto Pereira. The Crown greatly valued expertise in these matters. The possibility of the transmission of this experience, information, archives, bonds too, between an agent and a candidate in training within the family, partly explains the repeated appearance of brothers, uncles, nephews, etc. The operation thereof was subject to less change when someone was trained by another agent. Experience was accumulated, and with it, the potential efficiency in the execution of business. The significant presence of Converso in the network of Curial agents is the reflection of the importance they had at Rome and in the business of issuing of apostolic letters, papal bulls, if you prefer. Ultimately, the causes are the same. The factors that causes the attractiveness of the Curia for Conversos likewise explain why the Crown chose many of them as agents and the problem which was never fully resolved with them. The market developed around the issue of apostolic letters was an open path to enrichment and social mobility, above all by means of the cathedral chapters. The image is repeated again and again with each of the New Christian agents I know. For example, Andrés Vela. Andrés Vela, here you are, amassed thousands of ducats, of ducados, in ecclesiastical benefices, delivering more of them to his brothers. In an incredible social leap, a few years later, his nephews had entered the ranks of the nobility with habits of a knight in Castile, the title of Counts of Barrio in Naples, that Andrés Vela bought, and marriages that allowed them to link with prominent noble houses, the Italian Carafa, the Spanish Fernández de Córdoba, etc. The Torres, another example, shared the prosperous dignities of Archdeacon of Vélez, Chancellor and Dean of the Cathedral of Malaga. Simultaneously, they formed a true episcopal dynasty in Italy, and the various branches of their descendants also donned the habits of a knight of military orders in Portugal, obtained Italian fiefdoms and noble titles such as the Marquisate of Dragonetti de Torres. The presence in the Curia of Antonio Pinto and his nephew Francisco Vaz Pinto assured his brothers and relatives several of the most prominent Portuguese cathedral prebends: the Archdeaconship of Lisbon, the Deanship of Oporto, the Chancellorship of the Cathedral of Coimbra, several canonries, etc., etc., the income of which helped Pinto to build rich emorgados, entail estates, and become part of the elite of Portugal over years. The position of Juan Rubio de Herrera as an agent of Naples, Sicily, and Milan was expressly reflected on his tombstone in the Church of Montserrat in Rome. His nephew, who commissioned it, the agent Juan de Córdoba, did not hesitate to use the position the accumulated prebends, half prebend in the Cathedral of Córdoba, canonry in the Cathedral of Murcia, etc., and associated prestige to qualify his uncle, the son of a New Christian silversmith, as a Cordovan noble, nobili cordobensi, and design a showy coat of arms for him, blatant imitation of that of the famous great captain, Don Gonzalo Fernández de Córdoba, the Duke of César, precisely the conqueror of the Kingdom of Naples. It was too great a temptation not to take advantage of the great potential of an office as that of the agent of the crown, who was often poorly paid or late. The crown itself sometimes compensated its agents by allowing such practices. In a context marked by simulation and quid pro quo, many agents ended up establishing ties of interest in the dataria which were sometimes counterproductive to the crown. However, the vital importance of the issuing of apostolic letters for the daily life of the territories of the Portuguese and Spanish empires made of the system of Curial agencies a characteristic solution and an irreplaceable apparatus. Surely, the Jewish ancestry of one or two agents escapes me, but what is interesting is not so much the existence of an ignored drop of Converso blood as the fact that several New Christians were employed by the Catholic monarchy as agents for Curial businesses, being well known their background, with relatives accused by the Inquisition, with problems accessing military orders, cathedral chapters, university colleges with statutes of purity of blood. Despite the image to the contrary that we could have during the rule of monarchs like Philip II, Philip III, Philip IV of Spain and Portugal, many individuals whose Jewish ancestry was not a secret to the crown were procured and contracted for these offices in Rome, The families of these men ended up, in many cases, joining not only the elites of their cities of origin, but also the Spanish, Portuguese, and even Italian nobility over time, of course. In some cases, in a very short space of time. Thank you very much.